So I want to make a quick video on how to program drums. Programming drums is a very useful skill to have. I'm just getting into it because before the pandemic, I've always been able to call up a drummer or book somebody or do something along those lines. So this video is just to show you the basics of drum programming. So this morning I laid a few tracks down just to kind of get us going a little bit. I'll play it for you, and then this is what we're going to use as like a template to write our drums to. Yeah, it's just a loop, you get the idea. So the way I begin doing this is I normally start off with an instrument track. I created one here, and if you have Pro Tools, you can use Expand, you can use any kind of MIDI sampler that's there. I'm gonna actually use Contact. This plugin's free. If you go to Native Instruments, you can download this whole package for free. I'll put a link below. We'll go to Factory Selection. And then in here, I'm just gonna pick like the funky drum kit. This is a sample of drum pack that gives you a lot of cool parameters you can mess around with. If you want to edit in Pro Tools, you have to go to Window, MIDI Editor. So if you've never used a MIDI window editor before, basically it's a pretty simple process. You have a grid, and up here you can see it will tell you what your measure is, so you can see what part of the beat it is. So this is bar 1, beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and then the grid breaks it down to, in this case I have it set to 16ths, but we can set it to 1/8 notes just to make it easier to start off with. But yeah, this gives us our basic outline of what's happening in a measure. So in this case, if you go to C1, this would be our kick. And if you keep going, then you would have like your snare, and your hi-hat, and then a bunch of other drums. Whatever you want to add. To start off, we're just going to make a very super simple drum groove, and it's just going to be snare on the 2 and the 4, kick on the 1 and the 3, and then from there we're going to embellish it a little bit. So I'm going to use the pencil tool, and I'm going to go to my groove is starting here. So that's the first beat, third beat, and then the snare is going to go on the 2, and then on the 4. And if I play this, let me just mute the other tracks. If we play this, it sounds like this. Super simple. I'm just gonna expand this out a little bit more. I'm gonna use a hi-hat, and I'm just gonna draw, which one do I like better? This one. And I'm just gonna do it on every 1/8 note, just to kind of start us off. So here we have a very simple rock groove that we could use. It's pretty boring. This is by no means exciting. We can do some cool things too if we want to add a little bit of dynamics, and we will eventually do that. But for now, let's start with this and see what it sounds like with the music so far. I'm just gonna map out what I played on the bass guitar, and then I'm gonna kind of use that to kind of see if I can build some kind of relationship between the kick and the bass guitar. So stick with me for 1 second. If I just listen to the track, so I got do, do. And these are just going quarter notes. So this would be the kick and the bass following each other. Okay, so we just mirrored the bass guitar, which is cool. It sounds good. It's definitely locking a little bit more. So now let's kind of play a little bit more with the rhythm and just see what we can do with that kick drum and give it its own kind of syncopation. There's a couple spots where the kick and the snare are landing. Let's see what it sounds like if I take those out. All right, maybe. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Okay, so that's starting to sound fairly decent with the kick pattern. If you find that it still feels a little bit generic, a good trick you can do is double out what you're programming to. So in this case, we have 2 bars that we're doing. I'm gonna double out to 4 bars, and I'm gonna use bar 3 and 4 to kind of give another variation of on the kick drum. So it just kind of gives a bigger loop sample that we can play with. Okay, and so now that I doubled it out, I'm just going to play with that kick drum a little bit more on the second half of this loop just to kind of switch it up. Okay, so the whole thing with the kick pattern switched up a little bit sounds like this. Let's look at that hi-hat. One thing about that hi-hat that's really annoying, and this is a common thing when you're playing with samples, especially when you're drawing it in like this, is that there is no dynamic. It's just and that's not how people naturally play. So what I'm gonna do is every second hi-hat hit, I'm just gonna bring back the velocity a little bit, just to give it a little bit more of a human kind of feel to it. Okay, I'm sure there might have been a quicker way, but I'll just speed that up in post-production. Yeah, let's hear what that sounds like. The nice thing about having 4 bars to play with is we have a little bit more room to experiment and just kind of uniquely create something out of this. So let me just add something to the snare and we'll keep going. I think for this I want to have a little bit more of a snare feel, like I've got at the end. So I'm just going to change my grid just so I can see what's going on. Oops, wrong one. Let's go to 16ths. So just to kind of spruce things up a little bit, I added like a 16th note fill at the end of the 4 bars. I also added like a 16th note hit on the end of bar 2. Don't know if I'm gonna keep it yet or not, but you know, it sounds pretty cool for now. Now for me, this is enough for me to get going and start layering some other ideas and start building the song. But if you wanted to embellish the drums a little bit more, you can create an extra instrument track or just add it to this track, some toms, some cymbals. If you wanna have a crash, you know, just to kind of make it more interesting. There's a lot of room for it. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you get a chance, like and subscribe and leave comments, things that you would do differently, things that you would recommend, things that you liked, you know, all that stuff. And thank you very much. Take care, everyone.